What do you get when you combine Space Pirates of the Caribbean with a group of plucky heroes from an 80s adventure movie, throw in a bit of child endangerment, and cover it over with a thin veneer of Star Wars paint? Why, you get exactly what it sounds like. Skeleton Crew wears its inspiration on its sleeve, harkening back to 80s gems like Flight of the Navigator, The Last Starfighter, E.T., Space Camp, and so on. And of course, it takes a ton of inspiration from the Goonies. But does it come close to anything in that movie so far? The humor, adventure, characters, or story?
Then I made a noise like this. Oh my God! What? That's my mom's most favorite piece. What?
There's long been a debate about just how much Star Wars is a property for kids or not. That all kicked off with Return of the Jedi and the Ewoks, which I was too young to realize at the time since I grew up with it and it had always existed as part of the established lore. I never minded it at all. But I guess a lot of others who'd seen the movies as they released were thrown off by those furry little critters. Something like that moment occurred for me with the prequels. There hadn't been any new Star Wars live action on the screen since the Ewok movies in 1984 and 85. Aside from the animated series, all the kids that grew up in the 80s and 90s grew up with a maturing Star Wars expanded universe, embodied in comics, books, and games like Heir to the Empire, Dark Empire, TIE Fighter, Dark Forces, and so much more. So when The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, my pent up nerd glee exploded all over the theater 11 times. It took me 11 watches in the theater before denial turned to anger, and I finally accepted that I hated episode 1. It was too kidified, with dumb fart jokes and the most annoying character to this day, among other issues. I know episode 1 has a lot of love now, and I have softened on it a bit over the years, but that hit me hard. And then there were the Clone Wars and other CGI animated series that seemed like they were made for kids, but struck a chord with older crowds, due to their endearing characters and progressively mature and nuanced storytelling. And then the dark time, the Disney years. There have been highs and lows under Disney, but those highs like Rogue One and Andor, which I finally saw recently thanks to the insistence of a viewer of this channel. It was an excellent suggestion, thank you, and I will do a review of it sometime, as it absolutely deserves it. But there have been more lows than highs, and the tone has been all over the place. Well, with the Skeleton Crew, there's no debate. This is a kids' adventure show squarely aimed at the younger audience. But even still, surprisingly, there is some fun to be found for older audiences, similar to old Amblin movies or the type of movies Disney or Pixar used to make, where everyone could find something that spoke to them. The first episode of Skeleton Crew really wasn't that great at all, but the second episode picks up and actually left me interested in what was going to happen next. Does that mean the show's great? No, not at this point. But for something I was going into following The Acolyte, which I took a big dump on in my reviews, I was fully prepared to hate this thing. And yet, I don't. It's a strange feeling, like a dog that finally catches up to a cat it's been chasing and then doesn't know what to do. Maybe it's because of all the bad shows and movies we've gotten from Disney that this series seems like a step up somehow. Effort has been put into this show, and you can tell. There is heart and a sense of fun and adventure. The intro is sufficiently exciting and violent, with a pirate boarding party taking out the crew of a freighter. There are a lot of cool aliens on display, with this guy finally getting some justice for his replacement in the special edition. And he looks totally badass. Jude Law's character is there briefly, and then we're on to Space Suburbia, where the school system resembles something out of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or just the Republic here.
Once you're assigned a career path, you'll become part of our planet Aten's contribution to the great work, keeping the Republic peaceful and strong.
This was probably my least favorite part of the show. It doesn't feel like Star Wars at all. Space Suburbia reminds me too much of the retro futuristic bar scene with Dex and the Attack of the Clones. It's too close to an altered vision of the Earth rather than a galaxy far, far away. Everything is there: school buses, streetlights, comics, action figures, kids messing around in school and getting in trouble with the principal. It feels like an attempt to capture that Stranger Things feel in a Star Wars skin, and it just feels wrong. Our characters are four children all going to the same school in the same town, and they can be a bit grating at times. Fern is obnoxiously overconfident, and Wim is obnoxiously foolish and reckless. They're all archetypes. You've got the nerdy smart girl, KB, who solves problems and is good with tech, though Geordi called and wants his visor back. There's a reluctant worrywart, Neil, who looks a lot like Max Rebo the Ortolan, but kind of different. He's basically the chubby kid that follows the group around, worrying about everything. And I swear I've seen that haircut somewhere before. We have the irresponsible rascal, Wim, the main protagonist, who is careless to the point of annoyance. His acting is probably the weakest for me, and I disliked him more and more as the episodes progressed. Although this was basically me in school, so maybe it's just a bit of self-loathing or something. And then there's the rebel without a cause, Fern, who's the risk-taking daughter of the undersecretary, who seems to have a certain amount of power or wealth. Fern is the brash, confident, risk-taking leader type. Although it does go too far sometimes, like when she pulls a gun on a group of pirates. It's a little much. Most of the acting from these four is fine, but it's no Stranger Things. Our heroes find themselves on an unintentional space adventure, much in the same way the Space Camp kids did. Things really pick up in episode 2, and the addition of the droid SM-33 is very welcome. He's a cool character that brings some fun to the whole thing, which he well should, as he's voiced by Nick Frost of UK comedy fame. There are lots of aliens, which is great, a lot of practical costumes, which look kind of goofy sometimes, but I like it because it feels like a return to the original Star Wars practical sets and effects. Some wacky critters are here too, which is fun.
This wee ferryman will take you to the port.
And really, it's all about pirates so far. The pirates tread the line between a pretty cool addition and not belonging in the Star Wars universe at all. At times you get the "arr" pirate accent and behavior, and it's really on the nose. These are not scumbags from Nar Shaddaa. These are more like Pirates of the Caribbean imported into Star Wars with universe-appropriate alien costumes. Jude Law's character at the beginning is on a quest for booty and faces a mutiny from the crew, reflecting any number of pirate shows and movies from years past. And there's a really direct homage to the Goonies.
Look!
Overall, the pirate setting is entertaining, even though it's obviously a pirate's cove complete with netting hanging on the walls. It's much better than Space Suburbia. There are some intriguing aspects of the show for Star Wars fans, plus a few Easter eggs, like the kids watching the holiday special, which was kinda hilarious. The planet the kids are from, At-Atin, seems to be almost mythological and isolated from the rest of the galaxy. The credits the kids have are Old Republic credits, and they seem unaware there are any other kind.
Where'd you two find an Old Republic credit in mint condition?
His dad gave it to him for lunch money.
And the Undersecretary does refer to the Republic rather than the New Republic.
Keeping the Republic peaceful and strong.
So there's some mystery there. Jude Law's character, who we see precious little of in episodes 1 and 2, is also intriguing, as a pirate captain / Jedi, or just Force sensitive. Who knows? So, does Skeleton Crew do anything for the Star Wars franchise? Does it rescue a brand that's been so vandalized and abused at Disney's hands by such trash like The Last Jedi, Boba Fett, and The Acolyte, to name but a few? No, not really. Most of the time, this doesn't even feel like Star Wars. If you changed how the aliens looked and took the Jedi references out, you wouldn't recognize it for Star Wars at all. And maybe it would have been better for it. As it is, under the Lucasfilm umbrella, I'd have to say that at this point, it's worse than The Mandalorian, the polar opposite of Andor, and better than most of the rest so far. We're only 2 episodes in after all. But the demographic this is aimed at may limit its exposure to the fan base at large, which, let's admit, is predominantly middle-aged men at this point. Yes, a lot of women like Star Wars too, but when episodes 4 to 6 came out back then, it was space stuff for boys, who are all grown up now. Something Disney seems to struggle with understanding. I'm the first one to admit that this show wasn't made for me. I'm not in the right age bracket, and I'm definitely all for the more mature and nuanced tales like Empire Strikes Back, Rogue One, and Andor. But there are some fun and interesting things going on here, and it left me kind of wanting to see where this goes. It's not boring or offensive, which is more than I could say for most of the other Disney Plus series. At this point, it's surprisingly alright. Well, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching and let me know what you thought in the comments. That hair though, I swear I've seen it somewhere.